I love police dramas. I love seeing a mystery being solved and murderers being caught. But I'm also very picky when it comes to the ones that I watch. I don't like the CBS procedurals like the NCIS series, nor do I like shows like The Rookie or Law & Order. I'm not saying they suck. I mean, there's a reason why they're still on the air. It's just that I'm pretty picky when it comes to what sleuths I watch on TV. I enjoy stories that tend to surprise me. Elementary and Monk are probably my top two detective shows that I've seen in recent years. But there is one detective who is the king of TV detectives. One who would leave a mark on the genre that every other show since has tried to replicate. A detective who is one of, if not the greatest TV detective of all time, Columbo. But who is this slob of a detective? How could such a disheveled man be such a badass? How could a man that drives the most pathetic car in the world be the scourge of murderers everywhere? Well, let us find out in this episode of Gone, but Not Forgotten. Columbo was created by lifelong friends William Link and Richard Levinson. Link and Levinson met in junior high due to their love of magic, mental puzzles, and detective books, specifically the Ellery Queen series. They began their professional career writing for radio and then transitioned into primetime TV. They wrote for magazines like Ellery Queen Mystery Magazine and Playboy. Then they transitioned to playwriting with their play Chain of Command that was adapted for an episode of the TV anthology series Westinghouse Desilu Playhouse. This only got the ball rolling when they traveled west in the 1960s. They wound up working on classic series like Alfred Hitchcock Presents, Dr. Kildare, and The Fugitive. During this time, they developed a friendship with the legendary producer Aaron Spelling, who took them under his wing and taught them how to produce. In 1960, the two men were working in their office when they were told that they had to leave because the Writers Guild had just gone on strike. The two men were pissed and decided to just write a novel together, but they soon realized that there was a loophole in the Writers Guild's rules. They could work for live TV, which is when they approached the Chevy Mystery Show to write an episode. The two men sat down and wrote an episode called Enough Rope, which featured a detective named Columbo. Columbo was inspired by several sources, the three main ones being Fyodor Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment character, Porfiry Petrovich, G.K. Chesterton's humble cleric/detective Father Brown, and Inspector Fichet from the French suspense thriller film Les Diaboliques. Oddly, the origin of the name Columbo remains a mystery. Levinson and Link have said that they can't remember where the name came from. There are several theories, and Link has said that he thinks it may be because of his love of boxing, since the famous boxer Rocky Marciano had a handler named Ali Columbo, but he also said the name could have come from the Columbo crime family, or the famous nightclub called Palumbo. The truth, he said, will always remain a mystery. The duo then wrote another play featuring Columbo called Prescription Murder. Link said that the audience who watched this play would go nuts whenever the actor who played Columbo, Thomas Mitchell, would come out at curtain call. It didn't matter that he was third billed in the cast. The crowd went nuts when Columbo was on stage. Accordingly, the play was adapted as a TV movie for NBC. But who would play Columbo? Mitchell had sadly died of cancer while the play was touring, so the first choice they had to replace the role of Columbo was Bing Crosby.
I'm dreaming of a white Christmas.
Yes, Mr. White Christmas himself, legendary entertainer Bing Crosby, was offered the role of the greatest TV detective of all time. But Bing turned it down because it would interfere with his golfing. Link and Levinson were stumped on who to cast instead. Enter Peter Falk. Peter Falk had been acting since the 1950s, having a long career in stage, film, and television. It's funny because Falk was told not to expect any success in film since he had a glass eye. But he went on to prove them wrong as he wound up becoming an Oscar-nominated actor. He was a talented artist who was not afraid to speak his mind. One of my favorite stories about Falk was when he was a teenager playing baseball when an umpire argued with him about a call he made. He then took out his glass eye, handed it to the umpire, and told him he could make a better call with one eye, and that the umpire needed 3 of them. Falk got a hold of the Columbo script and told Lincoln Levinson that he would kill to play this cop, so they gave him the role, and the rest is history. The first TV movie, Prescription Murder, aired on February 20th, 1968. It was a huge ratings hit for NBC, so much so that they ordered another one. The new Columbo TV movie, called Ransom for a Dead Man, would air on March 1st, 1971. Again, it was a gigantic hit. NBC quickly ordered them to make a 22-episode series, but Falk refused. He had done a series called The Trials of O'Brien, and hated it, feeling that the schedule had kept him away from friends and family. He also felt that being locked into a show would prevent him from doing other roles that he was offered. So the network made a compromise. They would create the NBC Mystery Movie series, an anthology where they would air different mystery TV shows. So now Peter would only just work on 7 Columbo episodes per year. And this was perfect, because they were given 76 minutes to create episodes that were basically shot as a short film. This gave new directors ways to experiment with shooting a show. The most infamous example was Columbo's first episode, Murder by the Book, which aired on September 15th, 1971. This episode was legendary because of the rookie director behind the camera named Steven Spielberg. Spielberg said he cut his teeth as a filmmaker working on Columbo. Apparently before this, he was just told to shoot everything he worked on as instructed. But Lincoln Levinson did the opposite. They told Spielberg to experiment, take chances, and push himself as a filmmaker. In fact, they went to bat for him at Universal and demanded that the studio give him a chance to direct an upcoming TV movie of theirs called Duel. This was Spielberg's first film, and its success would lead him to eventually make Jaws. And so one of the greatest directors of all time was born. Spielberg was not the only famous name who started on Columbo. Jonathan Demme, the director of Philadelphia and Silence of the Lambs, as well as TV legend writer-director Stephen Bochco, were just a few on this massive list. So what separated Columbo from the other crime dramas? Well, to start, we don't have to figure out who the murderer is. We know from the start. The point of the show is not to figure out who did it, but rather it's how they're going to get away with it. And that's because of a sloppy, distracted detective named Frank Columbo. Lieutenant Frank Columbo is our star, and you just can't help but love the guy. He always comes off as an ah-shucks goofball who you just want to hug. However, Columbo is a genius. He catches the smallest things that any other detective would overlook. This means he catches on to who did it right off the bat. A game I always like to play when I'm watching an episode is when did Columbo clock who the murderer was? And what did they do to give themselves away? Sometimes it's obvious, like feigning grief, and other times it's just making a small mistake, like picking something up off the floor. At this point, he begins to flatter them and pretend to be incompetent. The killer always starts off arrogant, which only leads to them screwing themselves over. You can see this whenever Columbo does his famous catchphrase, one more thing.
Oh, one more thing, sir.
There's one more thing, sir. One other thing. In regard...
One more thing.
It's a brilliant tactical move on his part, because whenever he says it, it's always him pointing out a hole in the criminal's story just as he's leaving the scene. Lincoln Levinson came up with this by accident. When they were writing the initial play, they forgot to add some dialogue in a scene that Columbo was supposed to say. They said that they were too lazy to rewrite the scene, so they just wrote that Columbo came back and said one more thing to add the missing dialogue. My favorite episodes are the ones that end with the killer admiring Columbo's skill at catching them. Columbo could also be passionate to these criminals, sometimes even feeling disappointed in them for failing to get away with it. I will say this though, the man is a sadist. Sometimes I can just picture Columbo's police captain going, "Hey Columbo, great job at solving the Mrs. Chad murder, but did you really have to torture them so much? Don't get me wrong, Frank, you're amazing, but we have like 20 other cases that you could have solved had you not taken so much time to mind one specific criminal." Another thing I love about this show is the use of its guest stars. On modern crime shows, the famous guest star is always wasted. Yeah, it's cool that they're on the show, but you know that they're the killer, so very often they wind up giving a one-dimensional performance. But on Columbo, you know how they did it, but now they have the episode to go back and forth with Falk. Peter Falk used to improvise things to throw off the other actors. For example, he would fumble around with things and get distracted in the middle of a line. This would cause the other actors to scramble to save the scene, causing them to come across as a murderer would under pressure. Columbo probably had the best guest stars on TV ever. It wasn't just their popularity, but rather the performances that they gave, which were excellent. Some of my favorite performances were Martin Landau in the role of twin brothers, Ann Baxter, who played a murderous movie star, Dick Van Dyke playing against type as a Pulitzer-winning photographer who kills his wife, and so many more. While watching this series, I was also surprised at the amount of Star Trek stars. Ricardo Montalban plays a Mexican bullfighter who murders his business partner. Leonard Nimoy's episode, A Stitch in Time, was one of the few Columbo episodes where Columbo ever lost his cool. Walter Koenig guest starred in an episode with William Shatner, and Shatner would appear in 2 episodes of Columbo, with him Shatnering up the screen in both of these episodes. Although in his second episode, he had a little something on his face. Seriously, that mustache looks like someone took a marker to his face while they were sleeping. Hey Tiberius, you might want to get a napkin for that thing. If I had to list my 2 favorite episodes, the first one would have to be Suitable for Framing, which is about the murder of an art collector by his nephew. I don't want to give anything away, but I just found the mechanics of this murder to be so clever. The second episode I love is Now You See Him, where Columbo has to catch a murderous magician. Jack Cassidy was one of the few actors who would come back to play other characters on this show. His first was the most memorable in the Spielberg-directed episode Murder by the Book. I know many will say that there are better episodes in the series than Now You See Him, but I just love the performances in this episode so much, as well as this great moment in the episode.
You know, down in headquarters, we've got these special handcuffs for dangerous criminals. They're absolutely foolproof. You can't get out of them. And the boys down at the station, they said nobody could get out of them. And I wagered that you would. I don't know whether you can, sir, but would you like to try and see whether you could do that? Go ahead. I knew you could do it.
Peter Falk was very protective of the Columbo character, and with good reason. Falk was responsible for many of the character's trademarks. He was the one who chose Columbo's piece of crap car. He was the one who came up with his signature look. Hell, it was his personal coat that he wore throughout the series. He had bought the coat in the late 1960s, and he still kept it up until the time of his death. Falk would fight tooth and nail with anyone who he felt was trying to bring down the character. He walked off set a few times when he felt that the quality of the show was suffering. His reason was that everyone on the crew was working too hard on a great show, and it would be an insult to everyone if the episode came in below quality. Everyone who worked with Peter just had huge respect for this legendary actor. The last time we would see Columbo was on January 30th, 2003, in an episode called Columbo Likes the Nightlife. In 2007, there were plans to bring the character back for one final episode called Columbo's Last Case. ABC passed on the script, and even though there were plans to go to other networks, it sadly never came to be, as Peter Falk was tragically diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, and by the end of his life, Falk's mind had deteriorated so badly that he couldn't remember who Columbo was. A truly heartbreaking ending. If you love Columbo, Peter Falk, or hell, even this entire show, then please take a minute to donate something to the Alzheimer's Association. This organization seeks to better the research against this horrible disease. Not only that, but they also help families suffering through the destruction that this disease causes in its wake. You folks can learn more by going to alz.org. Please take a minute of your day to help future generations. So now for the question we always ask, should this show come back?
Oh, wow!
Not a chance in hell. Even though I would love to see the character come back, or at least have some sort of cameo, it's impossible. Peter Falk was Columbo. There is no substitute. You cannot capture that magic. It's a once-in-a-lifetime event. It could never be replicated. Still, it would be nice to see them write some novels about the character. There have been books in the past, but it would be cool to see them write some more. Personally, my fanfiction would be a crossover between Columbo and Monk. Turns out that Columbo is Monk's illegitimate father who had to keep his distance from him for his own protection. It's complicated. It involves Soviet spies who are creating cyborgs to take over the world. Okay, it sounds stupid the more that I talk about it. On a serious note though, if you want to see a crime show that will blow every other crime show out of the water, then Columbo is the show for you. So take a minute out of your day, put away your crappy coat, and watch the nicest detective in the world drive murderers insane. You will not regret it.
I see you, and you see me, but you're blowing.
Oh, and one more thing. If you want to see the greatest detective show of all time, then you can see a lot of these episodes for yourselves on the Freevee streaming service, where you can stream them for, well, free. You're welcome.
The line when you're making a scene, oh girl, you wanna know what my head overlooks. My senses will show to my heart when it's watching for lies. Oh, you can escape my hand. Rubbing us, they're watching you. They see your every move. Rubbing us, they're watching you.
I'm Jesse Shade, speaking on behalf of David Arroyo for JoBlo.com. And thank you for watching our show. If you like what you see, please subscribe to our JoBlo Videos channel. Tell your friends who like this sort of content, and turn on the bell to receive notifications for all of our latest videos. We're an independent company that appreciates all of your support. And we will see you next time for the next installment of Gone, But Not Forgotten.